police. A 29-year-old Kayshawn Williams was arrested just after 11 a.m. today at a home in the 1100 block of Eagle Chase Lane after a brief standoff with police. Williams is charged with the murder of his girlfriend, 27-year-old Jasmine Cooper, as well as her unborn child. Officers tell WI10 that it's believed that the child was Williams's. Officers went to an apartment on West Arlington Boulevard back on July 9th, just before 10 a.m. for a report of an unresponsive woman. Cooper, who police said was 38 weeks pregnant, was taken to ECU Health.
Jasmine Cooper was a 26-year-old woman. She lived alone in a small white house on a quiet street. She worked at a hospital helping older people. She wanted to become a nurse one day. Jasmine had a boyfriend. She had friends. She liked books and movies. She smiled a lot. She stayed out of trouble. But everything changed in just one moment. It was a Thursday night. The sky was dark. The time was 9:40 p.m. Jasmine had just come back from the corner store. She had snacks in one hand and her phone in the other. She was texting someone. She walked up the steps to her front door. That was the last thing she ever did. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the silence. Bang! Jasmine fell to ground. She had been shot in the chest. The snacks dropped beside her. Her phone slipped out of her hand. She died before help could get there. Jasmine Cooper began her Thursday with a normal routine. She got up before the sun, tied her hair back, and wore her work clothes. She packed a small lunch and left the house by 7:30 a.m. At the hospital, she spent most of her shift cleaning patient rooms and helping elderly people to the bathroom. Staff describe her as quiet but dependable. She clocked out at 4 p.m. and drove straight home without making any stops. By 5:15 p.m., she was inside her house. Jasmine put her things away, changed into her favorite hoodie, and heated up leftover spaghetti. While eating, she watched a TV drama she liked and scrolled through her phone. A friend messaged her to come hang out, but she said she was staying in for the night. She sent a few laughing emojis, then put her phone down to take a shower. Around 7:30 p.m., Jasmine went to the neighborhood store to grab snacks. The store camera showed her walking alone and buying a soda, chips, and a candy bar. She paid with cash, thanked the cashier, and walked out. Her body language was calm and relaxed. Outside the store, the street was quiet, and the evening sky was starting to go dark. She got back home by 8 p.m. After locking the door, she went straight to her bedroom and turned on music. She danced a little, took selfies, and texted her cousin about weekend plans. At 8:20 p.m., a message came through her phone. It was short and strange, sent from a number not saved in her contacts. Jasmine read it, turned the music down, and stood still for a few moments before continuing her text like nothing had happened. Just before 9:30 p.m., the light on her porch came on. She was seen by a neighbor standing at the door, phone in hand, keys in her other hand. She appeared to be waiting. She stepped outside and stood on the small landing near her front steps. The street around her was quiet. Her front yard had no movement. The air was still. At 9:40 p.m., a gunshot was heard. Jasmine dropped to the ground near her doorway. Her snacks were found beside her. The soda can rolled into the bushes. Her phone screen was cracked. One bullet had struck her in the chest. The sound echoed across the street. People turned on their porch lights and peeked through curtains. Emergency services arrived quickly. Officers placed yellow tape across the yard. Flashing lights lit up the sidewalk as paramedics checked her pulse. There were no signs of a struggle. Jasmine's body was still, and no one was nearby. A second body would be found later that same night in a different location, but the connection between both scenes was not yet clear. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Where are you tuning in from? What are your thoughts as this story unfolds? Your voice matters. These are real people, real tragedies, and real lessons we can't ignore. Share this video with someone you care about. It could make all the difference. Welcome to Unseen Crime Dossiers, your home for spine-chilling cases, haunting before mysteries, and deep dives into the world of crime. From jaw-dropping real-life events to groundbreaking forensic discoveries, we're here to uncover the truth behind the most gripping investigations. Step inside. examine the evidence, and lose yourself in the shadows of true crime. Police officers secured Jasmine Cooper Street within minutes of the call. Yellow tape stretched from one light pole to the next, keeping everyone back. Neighbors stood silently on their porches while crime scene units arrived with cameras and bags. A police officer placed small markers on the ground, one beside her phone, one near the empty soda can, and another next to a fresh footprint in the dirt. Inside her house, everything looked normal. Her dinner plate was still in the sink. The TV in her bedroom was paused on a show she had been watching earlier. Her purse sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Nothing appeared stolen. The front door had no signs of forced entry. Officers carefully collected items and photographed the scene from every angle. Detectives searched the area for any outdoor cameras. The house across the street had a doorbell camera, but the batteries were dead. Another home had a working camera, but the view was blocked by trees. No footage showed who approached her door. One neighbor said they heard footsteps, but never looked outside in time to see who it was. A digital forensics team took her phone and began downloading its data. Texts, calls, photos, and app logs were pulled and stored. The last outgoing message was a casual reply to her cousin. Her call log showed no incoming calls after 8 p.m. One unsaved number had texted her earlier that night. That message was flagged and passed to investigators for tracing. At 1 a.m., police were called to a different street. A man had been found shot to death in an alley behind a row of houses. His wallet was missing, but his phone was still in his pocket. The phone's lock screen showed a missed call from a number that matched Jasmine's contact list. His fingerprints were scanned, and the lab confirmed his name hours later. The two deaths were added to the department's major crimes unit. Officers held a meeting at the station just before sunrise. Detectives created a timeline of events. Jasmine's day was mapped out hour by hour. The man's phone location was also tracked to show where he had been before he died. Maps were printed. Photos were pinned to boards. The lead detective circled two addresses in red marker. By the next morning, the news had spread. Local reporters arrived on Jasmine Street. A photo of her smiling face was shared across news apps and television screens. People driving by slowed down to stare at the house with yellow tape. A small flower was placed near the front steps. Inside the police station, the case file grew thicker. Each new page carried a new piece of evidence, but not yet a name. Detectives began their search by following the GPS data from Jasmine's phone. The signal showed clear movement from her home to the store and back, with no extra stops along the way. Her walking pace was steady, and the timestamps matched the time printed on her store receipt. There were no unusual gaps in time or distance on her route that night. Phone tower records placed Jasmine at home from 8 p.m. onward. Her location never left the property. App data showed she opened a music app, checked a weather app, and scrolled on social media for several minutes. She received one anonymous text, but there were no replies sent after that. Her phone stayed active until the exact minute it hit the porch floor. Meanwhile, investigators traced the movements of the second victim. His phone traveled across 3 different neighborhoods in the hours before his death. Surveillance cameras captured him near a gas station, then walking along a main road at 9:15 p.m. He was wearing a dark jacket and a hat. He was not alone in the video. A second figure walked behind him at a steady pace, but the face was not visible. That same night, the man's device connected briefly to a public Wi-Fi network near a closed community center. His last known location was 1 block from where his body was later discovered. Police collected security footage from nearby homes and businesses. In one blurry video, a car could be seen parked for 5 minutes, then speeding off without headlights. Both phones were analyzed together by digital experts. A shared number appeared in each contact list. The number belonged to a prepaid phone with no registered name. Investigators pulled call logs from the cell tower database and found that this same number had also contacted another person earlier that week, who was unharmed and refused to speak. Maps of the city were marked with pins showing key movements and timestamps. Officers used red strings to link events on the board in the investigation room. Jasmine's store visit, the second victim's walk, and the phone number signal all pointed to a 3-hour window of coordinated activity. Detectives noted that each major action happened in quiet areas with low camera coverage. By the end of the week, law enforcement had created a full digital timeline. Jasmine's actions were clean and routine. The man's route was longer and unpredictable. The phone number in question remained active for only 3 days before going dark. A search warrant was issued for phone company logs, nearby business routers, and any streetlight camera footage in the area that had not been checked. Officers began interviewing Jasmine's close contacts. The first person brought in was her boyfriend. He said he hadn't seen her in person that day, but had spoken to her on the phone in the evening. He described their conversation as short and normal. His location was confirmed through his phone's GPS and a timestamp purchase he made at a gas station 2 cities away. Next, detectives met with Jasmine's cousin, who had been texting her earlier. She provided screenshots of their chat, showing light conversation and weekend planning. There was no sign of distress or urgency in Jasmine's tone. Her cousin also mentioned that Jasmine had seemed distant over the past week, but didn't explain why. Her 2 closest friends were also questioned. One of them had tried to visit Jasmine the week before, but said the door was never answered. The other friend said Jasmine had mentioned someone bothering her with random texts, but never shared the messages. Neither friend reported any recent fights or strained behavior. Officers visited Jasmine's workplace. Her co-workers said she always kept her personal life quiet. One staff member remembered Jasmine looking more tired than usual during her last shift. No one reported hearing her speak of threats, trouble, or fear. Her supervisor handed over her locker key, where they found only basic items, scrubs, lotion, a notebook, and a folded photo of her and her mother. The investigation team also reviewed her school records. Jasmine was taking night classes at a community college. Her attendance was regular, and her grades were above average. Classmates described her as polite, but private. None recalled her mentioning anyone she didn't trust or feel safe around. Her online assignments showed steady activity leading up to the night she died. Parallel to Jasmine's case, police looked into the background of the second victim. He had a short criminal history involving trespassing and theft, but nothing violent. He had no job at the time of death and had recently moved into a shared apartment. His roommates said he often stayed out late and didn't talk much about his whereabouts. They didn't know he had any contact with Jasmine. After reviewing social connections, detectives found that Jasmine and the male victim had one mutual friend on social media. That person lived nearby and had recently deleted their online account. Officers marked the profile as a point of interest. Further checks were ordered on the deleted account's last activity, including private messages and linked phone numbers. The deleted social media account connected to both victims was flagged for further investigation. Cybercrime analysts recovered fragments of the profile's data, including a username, display photo, and last known IP address. The activity log revealed the account had been wiped just 12 hours after Jasmine's death. Authorities moved quickly to secure records from the platform's data servers before the trail grew cold. Archived messages showed that the deleted account had contacted both Jasmine and the second victim within the same week. Though most messages were erased, timestamps confirmed multiple private conversations occurred late at night. One recovered message sent to Jasmine read, "Keep your door locked. Some people play too much." It had been sent 2 days before she died. The IP address used to access the account pointed to a free public Wi-Fi zone in a local laundromat. Investigators visited the location and pulled security footage. The camera showed several people entering and exiting during the time frame, but no image clearly matched the suspect. A dark hoodie and face mask worn by one individual made identification difficult. Device data from Jasmine's phone revealed an unfamiliar app had been installed briefly and deleted the same day. Analysts retrieved traces of its presence and linked it to a chat-based platform with encryption settings that left almost no records behind. The app had connected to the same phone number that sent her the strange text on the night of her death. The second victim's phone was checked again. A video clip, less than 10 seconds long, was found hidden in a renamed folder. The clip showed a dark street and a hand reaching out to open a gate. No face or voice was captured, but the file's timestamp placed it just 1 hour before he was killed. The footage was passed on to the evidence lab for frame-by-frame enhancement. Investigators also retrieved phone logs from nearby cell towers. Pings from a third number placed someone in the area of both murder scenes within the same 2-hour span. This number was not saved in either victim's phones, but had been flagged in a past narcotics case. Officers cross-referenced it with a burner phone purchased 2 weeks before the killings. The data collected from deleted apps, erased accounts, and random phone numbers built a digital map of events. Though no single piece offered a full picture, each clue tightened the focus. The case began to shift from random violence to a pattern built on hidden contacts and online shadows. The task force expanded, and search warrants were drafted for further digital evidence. As digital leads came together, one name began appearing more than once in the background of both victims' lives. A man in his late 20s, with a minor arrest record and a history of switching phone numbers, was quietly placed under surveillance. His social media profiles were recently wiped, and his last known address was less than a mile from where the second body was found. A vehicle linked to him had been captured on a traffic camera near Jasmine Street just 20 minutes before her time of death. Investigators traced the car back to a rental company. The booking had been made under a false name, but paid for with a debit card tied to a closed bank account, once used by the same suspect in a previous fraud case. The man's financial activity showed purchases for gloves, prepaid SIM cards, and phone chargers, all within 3 days of the murders. Store surveillance showed him wearing a hoodie and avoiding eye contact with staff. One store clerk remembered him because he paid entirely in small bills and refused a receipt. Investigators gathered the video as supporting evidence. Surveillance teams monitored his movements for several days. He changed locations often, stayed in short-term rentals, and used Wi-Fi from cafes and public libraries. He never used the same device twice. Phone signals near these locations matched numbers that had briefly contacted both Jasmine and the second victim. Each time, the calls were short and immediately deleted from the logs. The team secured a warrant and searched one of the rented rooms. Inside, they found torn notebook pages, one phone with its SIM card removed, and a half-burned hoodie that matched witness descriptions. The wall mirror had fingerprints. A DNA swab from a used water bottle was taken for analysis. Forensic results later confirmed a match to evidence collected from the second crime scene. The suspect was quietly brought in for questioning. He spoke carefully, avoided eye contact, and denied knowing either victim. Officers noted scratches on his hands, and his shoes had traces of dirt that matched soil samples from Jasmine's yard. Though he refused to answer further, his phone history, location data, and physical evidence placed him near both bodies during the critical time window. Authorities added his name to the official case file as a person of interest. The digital threads, physical clues, and timeline details narrowed the investigation around him. Though not yet charged, the evidence was mounting. Prosecutors began preparing documents, and law enforcement continued gathering final proof to secure a stronger case. The task force met behind closed doors to review all collected materials. Each section of the board displayed confirmed evidence: surveillance images, GPS logs, message screenshots, and itemized receipts. A separate wall listed all timestamps in chronological order, allowing the team to visualize every movement tied to the events. Prosecutors requested forensic updates to confirm consistency across scenes. Lab reports showed that fibers from the suspect's jacket were found on a portion of the second victim's clothing. Soil particles from Jasmine's front yard matched dirt recovered from the soles of the suspect's shoes. Additionally, one partial print on a soda can collected from the porch showed ridge patterns consistent with his left thumb. Digital analysts presented a final summary of device activity. The burner phone linked to the unknown text had pinged nearby towers close to both deaths. Though the device had been wiped, metadata proved it had once paired with a Wi-Fi hotspot the suspect used regularly. Deleted app traces also revealed message drafts that matched recovered warning texts. The district attorney's office began drafting formal charges. Legal teams reviewed the warrant process and confirmed the chain of custody on every piece of evidence. Surveillance videos, witness interviews, and forensic files were labeled and prepared for court use. Officers finalized written statements and added supplemental reports to the case file. In a separate session, Jasmine's family was informed of the progress. They were shown a timeline, walked through each stage of the investigation, and updated on upcoming steps. A victim services officer remained assigned to support them through the legal process. Community leaders later organized a small candlelight vigil near her home. Meanwhile, detectives revisited old interviews for any overlooked comments. One neighbor's statement led officers to an alley near the second scene, where a discarded phone case was found. Lab tests identified traces of DNA from both victims. The item was added to the official evidence list and stored in a sealed container for trial use. With all core elements aligned, the investigative team submitted the final case folder. The file included data logs, forensic confirmations, location histories, and supporting testimony. No part of the case relied on guesswork. Everything had been checked, logged, and verified. The case was now courtroom ready. The arrest was made early on a Monday morning. Officers waited until the suspect left a local food mart and returned to his rented car. Once seated inside, unmarked vehicles closed in. He was removed from the driver's seat without resistance. A plainclothes officer placed him in handcuffs, while another read out the charges related to 2 homicides and obstruction of justice. Back at the station, the suspect was booked, fingerprinted, and photographed. The process followed standard protocol. He was placed in a holding cell pending an official bail hearing. During intake, he provided limited information and declined to name any associates. The legal team was notified, and a public defender was assigned to represent him at the arraignment. News outlets released a story within the hour. Photos from the arrest scene circulated across television and social media. Reporters stood outside the courthouse and police headquarters delivering updates. The suspect's background, former addresses, and prior legal issues were reviewed in online reports. Multiple outlets confirmed his link to both victims through digital and physical evidence. In court, prosecutors presented the timeline and forensic material to the judge. A request was made to deny bail, citing risk of flight and public safety concerns. The defense requested additional time to review the charges and examine evidence. The judge agreed to postpone formal plea entry and scheduled a hearing for the following week. At Jasmine's home, community members began placing signs and flowers on her fence. A painted board displayed her photo with the words, "Justice is in motion." Friends and neighbors gathered quietly, some bringing candles, while others left folded letters addressed to her. The second victim's family held a separate gathering in a nearby park with a similar memorial display. Investigators continued reviewing minor details of the case even after the arrest. Phone data was rechecked to ensure nothing had been missed. Analysts verified that all evidence had been stored correctly, including prints, videos, and files. Prosecutors added witness updates and neighborhood reports to support courtroom presentation. The case moved into pre-trial phase with most evidence admitted into the official record. Hearings were scheduled, and witness lists were organized. Legal teams reviewed the steps that had led to the arrest and confirmed that procedures were followed without error. The courtroom now held the final pieces. Everything gathered pointed toward trial. The courtroom was filled with quiet tension as the trial began. Rows of chairs were occupied by family members, press, and legal observers. The defendant sat beside his attorney, wearing a plain suit provided by the detention center. Across the room, prosecutors organized folders filled with months of investigative records. The judge entered, called the session to order, and opened the trial on record. Opening statements were delivered over 2 hours. Prosecutors outlined a timeline supported by digital logs, surveillance footage, DNA results, and phone activity. The defense challenged the evidence, calling it circumstantial and incomplete. They focused on the absence of a murder weapon and the reliance on indirect digital clues. Jurors listened without reaction, their faces focused and still. Witnesses took the stand one by one. A forensic analyst explained the match between soil samples and shoe residue. A digital technician described how encrypted apps had been traced through metadata. A store employee confirmed the suspect's purchase of phone-related items days before the crimes. Each testimony was supported by printed exhibits, photographs, and expert reports. Jasmine's cousin testified about their final conversation and the message that had raised concern. A neighbor described the moment the gunshot echoed down the street. A former classmate of the second victim confirmed his presence at a nearby cafe around the time of the second incident. Each person spoke clearly, guided by the court's procedures. The defense presented their own witnesses, including a family friend who claimed the suspect was elsewhere during the first crime. However, GPS data and time logs conflicted with the testimony. The defense attorney moved to exclude certain records, but the judge allowed them into evidence. Closing arguments began on the fifth day and ran through the afternoon. After all sides were heard, the jury left the courtroom to begin deliberation. They reviewed charts, message transcripts, location maps, and expert testimony. After 2 full days, they returned with a decision. The courtroom was called back to order. The foreperson stood, handed the written verdict to bailiff, and the judge read it aloud. The defendant was found guilty on all counts. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. The courtroom remained quiet as the judge thanked the jury and dismissed them. Family members of both victims exited without speaking. Outside, reporters delivered live updates as officers escorted convicted man back into custody. The trial had reached its end, but the story would remain. Here at Unseen Crime Dossiers, we're driven by a mission to uncover hidden realities, honor forgotten voices, and keep their memories alive. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something, there's more coming that will challenge you even deeper. Make sure to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a case. We're dropping new episodes regularly, and trust us, what's ahead is even more chilling. Before you go, we want to hear from you. What moment hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments. Your perspective matters, and your voice helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay alert, stay informed, and never stop seeking the truth, because every life deserves to be heard.